What if the person you trusted more than life itself turned out to be the most ruthless betrayer? Have you ever loved someone so much that you were ready to do anything for them? Ready to turn a blind eye to the pain, to the growing coldness in your relationship, just to bring back those warm moments that once felt eternal? Imagine coming home, cooking dinner to revive a love that's slowly dying, and then accidentally hearing a truth that shatters you from the inside out. Cheating, lies, and the ultimate devotion, thrown away like it meant nothing. But you know what? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the strength that awakens when your heart is broken. About revenge that will be as cold as ice. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. There was a time when Aurora and I were utterly inseparable. Ours wasn't just any relationship. It was the kind people admired from a distance, the kind that felt like it was ripped straight from a novel. We could lose ourselves in endless conversations about nothing in particular, yet it always felt like we were sharing the deepest parts of ourselves. We had inside jokes that no one else could understand, as though we existed in a world made just for the two of us. No matter where we were, we seemed to gravitate toward each other, always within reach, as if distance between us was impossible. But slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, something began to change. The conversations that used to pour out of us effortlessly started to feel forced and short. The gentle way she used to speak to me was replaced by something distant, and all the little things she did, the way her fingers would slide into mine without a thought, the way she would lay her head on my shoulder when she was tired, those vanished as though they had never existed. The nights that were once filled with warmth and closeness turned cold and unfamiliar. She would lie in bed with her back to me, a wall of silence I couldn't get past. Weeks went by without the simplest form of affection, not even a kiss that felt real. I kept telling myself this was normal, that maybe this was what long-term love looked like, that maybe routines and life's burdens had worn us down. But deep down, I was aching to hold on to what we had lost. So I decided I wouldn't give up. I wanted to fight for us, for everything we had been. One afternoon, I left work earlier than usual, determined to remind her of the love that had once been so strong. I stopped by the store and picked up everything I needed to cook her favorite meal, something I hadn't made in so long. I even grabbed a bottle of her favorite wine, telling myself this night would be special. When I got home, I set the table carefully, dimmed the lights, and let soft music play, hoping to recreate even a glimpse of what we used to share. When Aurora finally came through the door, she dropped her bag on the counter the way she always did. But when her eyes fell on the table, there was no smile, no flicker of emotion. Instead, she let out a sigh that filled the room like a heavy fog. "Elijah, you didn't have to do all this," she said, her voice carrying something cold that made my chest tighten. "I just wanted to do something nice for you," I replied, trying to force a smile that I didn't feel. She glanced around at everything I had put together, then looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "I already ate," she said, her voice flat. I stared at her, blinking as if I hadn't heard right. "What?" "I had dinner with Bridget after work. I didn't know you were planning this." She didn't sit down. She didn't touch a single thing I had prepared. She just mumbled that she was tired and walked straight to the bedroom, leaving me sitting there alone, staring at the meal I had poured my heart into, feeling more foolish than ever. A few days later, I left work early again, not on purpose, but because I simply couldn't focus. My mind felt foggy, my chest heavy like I was carrying around a weight I couldn't set down. Aurora had been distant for months, but after that night, the distance between us felt like a vast, empty canyon. As I drove home, I thought about stopping to buy her flowers, one more effort to reach her, but as I slowed near a flower shop, something deep inside me told me not to bother. No bouquet was going to fix what was breaking. When I walked through the door, the house was eerily quiet. Normally, on her day off, I would have found her lounging in front of the TV or thumbing through her phone. But now, there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Her car was still parked outside, so I knew she was home. Confused, I headed down the hall. That's when I heard her voice, laughing, a sound I hadn't heard from her in what felt like forever. I crept closer, my pulse quickening, an uneasy feeling settling deep in my stomach before I even knew why. "I'm so bored, Bridget. You honestly have no idea," she said, her voice light and playful. "Elijah is just... Ugh, I can't keep pretending." I stopped in my tracks, my body freezing as I pressed myself against the wall to stay hidden. "Even in bed, Bridget," she continued, her voice dropping to a secretive whisper. "I have to fake it every time." A bitter laugh escaped her lips, and on the other end, Bridget laughed too, like they were sharing some private joke. "It's honestly exhausting. I don't even want to sleep with him, but when I do, it's only so he won't start asking questions. God, I can't imagine living like this forever." My hands began to tremble, but I stayed rooted to the spot, every word cutting into me like a blade. "And you know that night Elijah made dinner for us?" "Yeah." "While he was playing house, I was with Lewis." She laughed again, louder this time, without an ounce of shame. "We went out for dinner, then got a room. It was incredible, Bridget. He actually knows how to make me feel good, unlike Elijah." Another burst of laughter filled the room, as if she had just told the world's best joke. I gripped the doorframe so hard my knuckles ached. Louis. His name felt like a punch to my gut. Yeah, we spent the night together. It was everything Elijah could never give me. My stomach churned, my body numb with shock, but I couldn't move. Part of me wanted to burst in and confront her, demand to know if it was true. But another part, one that was sharper, colder, knew I didn't need to ask. This wasn't a moment of anger or a passing confession. It was something deeper, something she had been hiding and now mocking without a second thought. I took a careful step back, doing my best not to make a sound. I didn't need to hear any more. She had already told me everything I never wanted to know. I don't know how long I stood there afterward. Maybe it was a minute, maybe an hour. My mind was a blank slate, my body shaking from something colder than ice. But beneath the shock, something else stirred. It was sharp, it was clear, and it was anger. I realized then that I wasn't some fool for her to toy with and laugh about behind closed doors. I wasn't going to keep playing along while she tore our life apart and made a mockery of everything we had. She thought I was blind, that I would never see past her lies. But she was wrong. She was about to realize just how mistaken she had been. I wasn't going to confront her, at least not yet. I had something better in mind. That night, while Aurora slept soundly beside me, I quietly reached for her phone. My hands were shaky as I unlocked the screen, my heartbeat thundering in my chest. I began scrolling through her conversation with Louis, and each message cut through me like a knife. "I can't stop thinking about last night," Louis had written. "Me neither." "I can't wait to see you again," she had replied. A sharp breath escaped me as I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. But I kept going. There were more texts, more pictures, more plans, and then the final blow, a message confirming they were meeting again the next day. I stared at the screen, a storm of rage and heartbreak swirling in my mind. I had suspected. I had overheard enough to make me doubt her, but now, staring at undeniable evidence, the truth still hit harder than I ever imagined. And yet, it wasn't enough. I needed to witness it myself. The following morning I left as if heading to work, dressed in my usual suit and tie. But instead of going to the office, I parked my car just a block away from our house, close enough to see everything, but far enough to remain unseen. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, I lost feeling in my fingers. Every tick of the clock felt like an eternity. Then, right at 11 a.m., Aurora stepped out the door. But she wasn't wearing her usual worn-out leggings and oversized hoodie, the lazy day outfit she always wore around me. From my car, I watched as she paused on the porch, adjusting her purse strap. No. Today, she was dressed to impress. Tight jeans that hugged her hips, a blouse cut low enough to show off just enough, makeup perfectly done, and a spritz of perfume I hadn't smelled on her in months. She looked incredible. But not for me. Never for me. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat and quietly followed as she drove away. She pulled into a small shopping center parking lot, and for a fleeting second, I tried to convince myself maybe she was just running errands. That hope was crushed when Lewis's car pulled up moments later. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. The second he got out, he walked straight to Aurora and kissed her. In broad daylight, out in the open, like they had nothing to hide. I clenched my jaw, my nails digging painfully into my palm as I reached for my phone. I snapped photos, every kiss, every touch, every moment, capturing it all from every possible angle. Then, as if twisting the knife deeper, she smiled at him, a smile I hadn't seen from her in years, wide and genuine, and wrapped her arms around his neck, leaning into him like he was her whole world. She laughed at something he whispered, tossing her head back, looking carefree and in love. After a few minutes, they climbed back into their cars and drove off. I already knew where they were heading. I followed them, keeping my distance, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to turn the car around and erase what I'd seen, but I didn't. I watched them pull into a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. Nothing classy, nothing subtle, just cheap and easy. They didn't even bother hiding it. Louis got out first and walked around to open the door for her like some kind of gentleman. Aurora stepped out, adjusting her blouse and smoothing her hair. Then, hand in hand, they walked through the motel entrance together. I took more photos. Proof. Concrete, irrefutable proof. But instead of feeling victorious, something colder settled over me. A strange calm, the kind that comes right before everything explodes. I knew exactly how this was going to end. And it wasn't going to be in quiet whispers. She betrayed me in secret, but I was going to destroy the illusion she lived in front of everyone. I knew when. I knew how. 2 days later, we were at her parents' house for dinner. I played my role flawlessly, smiling when expected, nodding along to conversations, even chatting with her father about work like nothing had changed. But everything had. What Aurora didn't know was that I had already spoken to a lawyer the day before. Divorce proceedings were in motion. She laughed and chatted beside me, oblivious. Oblivious that this would be the last time she would ever sit next to me pretending to be my loving wife. Her parents had always embraced me like their own son, always telling Aurora how lucky she was to have me. Tonight, I was going to show them what kind of woman their daughter really was. After dinner, everyone moved into the living room. Aurora curled up next to me on the couch, leaning into me as though everything was perfect. She laughed at her mom's joke, sipping her wine, completely unaware that her perfect little life was seconds from crumbling. I took a deep breath, steady and sure. "There's something I need to show you all," I said, my voice calm and even. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the TV, and hit play. The first image appeared, Aurora and Louis locked in a kiss. Gasps echoed around the room. The warmth in the air evaporated, replaced with a suffocating, heavy silence. Aurora's body tensed beside me. Her mother covered her mouth in shock, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. Her father leaned forward, his face hard, his jaw clenched in rage. I let the silence stretch, letting them all fully absorb the betrayal unfolding on the screen. Then came the next image, Aurora and Louis walking into that grimy motel together. "What the hell is this?" her father demanded, his voice sharp and cutting through the thick tension like a blade. It wasn't just anger in his voice, it was betrayal, heartbreak, and disappointment. Aurora's wine glass slipped from her hand, crashing to the floor and shattering into pieces. And in that moment, as she sat frozen in horror, everyone in the room saw her for who she truly was. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her breath shaky as she turned to face me, eyes wide with disbelief. "Elijah," she began, but I cut her off, my voice sharp and cold. "Save it, Aurora. I know everything now, every lie, every time you betrayed me. You were with him that night, while I sat at home, waiting, preparing dinner for us. I know it all." Her mouth opened like she was about to speak, but nothing came out. The heavy silence was shattered when her father shoved his chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He stood up abruptly, his face burning with fury as he glared at her. "Tell me this isn't true," he growled. Aurora's throat moved as she swallowed hard, her eyes darting between me, her parents, and the muted TV in the background. There was nowhere left to hide. Her hands trembled in her lap, betraying the calm she tried to fake. "Dad, Answer me!" he barked, his voice echoing off the walls, causing her to shrink back like a child caught red-handed. She hesitated for a moment longer before forcing out a whisper. "Yes." Her father let out a harsh breath, his face twisting in disgust as he shook his head in disbelief. "I didn't raise you to be like this." Her mother sat stiffly on the couch, her eyes brimming with tears, the weight of her disappointment thicker than any accusation. "Mom, please," Aurora tried to say, but her mother turned her head away, silent, her eyes glassy. Then her father's voice cut through the air, sharp as a knife. "You destroyed your marriage for what? Some meaningless affair?" Aurora didn't move, her eyes glistening as tears started to fall. "But me?" I felt empty. No rage, no grief, just a hollow void where love used to be. She reached toward me, her hand shaking, her voice desperate, as though she still believed this could be fixed. "Elijah, please. Can we just talk? Alone?" I stepped back, my face expressionless. There's nothing left to say. Her lower lip trembled, her eyes begging me to reconsider. "Please." I turned to her parents, speaking calmly, though my heart felt like stone. "You've always treated me like family, and I'll always be grateful for that. But I can't stay with someone who treats me like I don't matter." Finally, I looked her in the eyes, delivering the words that ended it all. "Go home, Aurora. Pack your things. You're not sleeping under my roof tonight." A sob tore from her throat. "Elijah," I refused to look at her. I wouldn't give her that piece of me. She wasn't my burden to carry anymore. She broke down, pleading, crying, her usual pride and coldness stripped away, leaving nothing but desperation. But it didn't matter. I was finished. I grabbed my keys and walked out of her parents' house without a second glance. She didn't follow me. I knew she wouldn't. Driving home, I kept my pace slow. I wasn't in a hurry to return, not if there was a chance she was still there. When I was a few blocks away, I pulled over and sat in the car, staring blankly at the steering wheel, letting the truth of it all sink in. When I finally made it home and opened the door, there she was. Standing in the living room, eyes puffy and red from crying, her suitcase half packed at her feet like a silent witness to what we both knew was the end. "Elijah, please. We can work through this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't stop. I walked straight over, zipped the suitcase closed, and dragged it toward the door. I wouldn't even look at her. With a bitter laugh, I muttered, "Now you want to fix it? You only care because you got caught." She rushed after me, shaking her head wildly, tears running down her cheeks. "No, it's not like that. I'll end it with Louis. I promise." I finally turned to face her, but my eyes were empty. There was nothing left, No anger, no love, just cold finality. "It doesn't matter anymore," I said quietly. "The divorce papers are already filed." She gasped, her body swaying as though the words had knocked the wind out of her. She covered her mouth with trembling hands, her eyes wide, realizing she was losing everything. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing uncontrollably. Not the quiet tears of guilt, but deep, ragged cries that shook her whole body. I stood still, watching her, waiting to feel something, anything. But there was nothing. No sadness, no hate. Just a strange, quiet peace. I moved to the door, opened it wide, and turned back to her. "Goodbye, Aurora." She looked up at me, her face pale, her voice a fragile whisper. "Elijah." I stared at her, remembering the woman who had laughed behind my back, who rolled her eyes when I tried to love her, who gave herself to someone else while I fought to hold us together. I motioned toward the door. "Leave." Her shoulders sagged, her fight completely gone. For the first time, she looked truly broken. And without another word, she walked past me and out the door. That night, I sat alone in the living room. No arguments, no tension, just stillness. But for once, the silence didn't hurt. It felt calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting. Not waiting to be loved, not waiting to be respected, not waiting for someone to choose me. I had chosen myself, and in that choice, I had found freedom I never thought I would. This story has come to an end. No one deserves to be in a relationship where they are betrayed, lied to, and undervalued. Love is not just about beautiful moments. It's also about respect, honesty, and loyalty. If one person keeps fighting for the relationship while the other is secretly destroying it, that relationship has no future. It's important to know when to walk away, to keep your dignity, and to choose yourself. You should never hold on to someone who has already let you go in their heart. Value yourself, your feelings, and never let anyone trample on your love. Because sometimes the strongest step you can take is to leave and start living again, for yourself. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Sometimes, everything falls apart not with a crash, but in absolute silence, amid glowing kitchen displays, icy compresses, and familiar routines. He wasn't expecting betrayal. It didn't look like the movies. No hallway kisses, no secret messages. It came in the form of a dress that screamed too loudly, and a look that no longer held a we. Just a regular office party, a bit of wine, strangers whispering, and suddenly, the world begins to crack. One wrong laugh, one unfamiliar voice behind a closed door, one moment where everything that once felt solid shatters into pieces. And then comes the choice. Swallow it, forgive, or smash to bloody pieces everything that suffocates you. He chose the latter. No tears, no pretty words, just the cold, the weight of a bottle in his hand, and the sharp clarity. There's no way back. No one expected how that night would unfold, but no one will forget how it ended. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. There are times when just staying afloat feels like all you can manage. Life doesn't stop piling on, and somewhere along the way, you slip into autopilot. You take one deep breath and dive back into the chaos, only to realize later you forgot to breathe again. People say that's just life now, but if that's really the case, what are we even doing? Sure, having it all sounds appealing, but if the price is your own existence, is it still worth chasing? The microwave, with its relentless flashing, 11 over and over, was enough to unravel me. My head was throbbing, which didn't help. You'd think that more than 20 years in Florida would have dulled my frustration with the constant blackouts. It hadn't. For ages, I'd been meaning to buy one of those whole house backup systems, but it never seemed urgent. And now, still didn't. That evening, I stepped into the kitchen and left the ceiling light off intentionally. The glow from the LED displays on the appliances cast enough of a halo to read a book. The room sat in a muted hush, and I liked it that way. Dim, silent, just me. I shifted on one of the bar stools, my lower back protesting, and silently blamed Caroline for talking me into them. They were slightly too tall, maybe by 10 centimeters, and the seats were rigid when they should have been plush. Worse still, they were almost 40% pricier than the ones I'd picked. But I let her win that one, thinking they'd only see occasional use, maybe breakfast on a slow weekend morning. I never expected to be anchored to one for over 2 hours. Yet there I sat. And the night? It was brutal. Actually, it wasn't even night anymore. The clock blinked 2:15 a.m. Between age and distance running, ice packs had become as routine for me as socks. After knocking out 20 to 25 kilometers, I'd dig into the freezer, strap the ice to my tendons, wedge more under the arches of my feet, and wait. I hated the chill, but I hated pain more. I'd never even heard of plantar fasciitis until it hit me. Then it stayed. For months. That's when I learned how cruel the wrong shoes and poor recovery could be. 10 minutes of running, 10 minutes of icing. The first few minutes of each run were torture, but once the pain dulled, I could manage. Ice became a ritual, a way to undo the day's damage. In winter, I'd sometimes trade the ice packs for the pool, unheated, waist deep, shoes off. It offered the same numb relief, only colder. Florida winters can still bite, but the sting never climbed higher than my knees. Tonight, though, the cold wasn't on my legs. It was wrapped around my face and hands. I've always loved the stretch from Thanksgiving to New Year's. I'd hoard vacation days just to soak it in. The lights, the calm, even the annoying stuff like the yearly office holiday party. Barely tolerable, but tolerable. As a manager, I was expected to show up, eat, mingle, act like I was having fun, and then quietly disappear. They'd open the bar for an hour and a half, and most people treated it like a sprint to blackout. I'd park myself at the edge, nursing a beer and doing damage control. It wasn't easy. Over the years, I'd had to call the cops more than once. Drunk drivers, fights, you name it. Some parties felt more like war zones than celebrations. Caroline had always tagged along, playing the part of the dutiful wife, until last December. She said she had a headache, though we both knew better. I didn't push, especially after she told me I didn't need to attend her party either. I remember thinking, finally, a break. I was wrong. This year, I asked her if she planned to come with me again. She started dodging days before I even asked. By the time I brought it up, her answer was already written on her face. Go without me, she said. And if you're not home too late, maybe we'll have a little celebration of our own. With that kind of offer on the table, I had no intention of staying out late. But somehow, I lingered longer than planned. Still, I got home around 10:30, and she kept her word. We had our own private gathering. I waited for her to bring up her party, but she barely mentioned it. Not that I was itching for the details. I'd already decided I wouldn't be attending. I even had a plan to use her own line on her. That was, until I saw the dress. She had bought it just for her event. Now, I know holiday outfits tend to be bold, sparkly, short, loud, but this one went way beyond that. It wasn't just festive, it was brazen. I stared and asked, "You're not seriously wearing that out Saturday night, are you?" She lifted an eyebrow. "What's wrong with it? I think I look fantastic." "Babe," I said, treading carefully, "that dress says a lot, and what it says is, I'm available right now. Don't you have something subtler?" Her face changed. "So, you think I can't pull this off? That it's too sexy, too young for someone like me?" I paused, weighing my words like landmines. "In that dress, Caroline, you'd look like a low-rent drifter." Her eyes narrowed. "A drifter?" "I'm not saying you don't look good," I said, "but a dress like that, without me beside you, it's just a lot." She didn't take it well. I knew she wouldn't. And just like that, despite it being mid-December, the temperature between us dropped fast. Still, I wasn't about to let it wreck the season for me. The following Saturday crept in, bringing with it Caroline's much-anticipated work function. I watched quietly as she readied herself, each brushstroke and last-minute tweak etched into my memory. When she finally stepped out, a vision in heels and red lipstick, she caught me watching, and spotted my freshly pressed suit. She paused, eyebrow raised. "And you're going where exactly?" "Heading to the event," I said. "With you." "I thought you weren't coming this year," she replied, folding her arms across her chest. "And let you walk in there looking like that solo? Not happening." Her gaze hardened. "So you don't trust me in this outfit?" "I don't have any trust left to give," I replied, voice flat. Her eyes turned icy. "Fine, but don't expect me to hold your hand the whole night." She spun back toward the mirror to finish up. When she finally stepped away, she looked even more flawless, enough to make me suggest, half joking but mostly serious, that we skip the whole thing. "How about we ditch the party?" I said. "Grab dinner somewhere quiet and head home after. I've got better ways to spend the night with you." She didn't laugh, didn't suggest an alternative. We pulled up to the Hilton, the usual spot for these kinds of corporate spectacles. Inside, clusters of employees circled around cocktail tables, while outsiders like me hovered around the edges, largely unnoticed. Caroline was swallowed by a crowd of her colleagues almost instantly, probably the same ones she always mentioned, and I spent the next hour making small talk with whoever looked equally out of place. Most of the guys I met had already hit the open bar pretty hard and were deep into slurred jokes and half-forgotten stories. I spoke with a few partners and spouses too. Several knew Caroline, and nearly all had some opinion about her manager, Declan. Apparently, his reputation preceded him. Some labeled him barely tolerable, others said he was human waste with a corner office. Smug, manipulative, predatory, the exact adjectives varied, but the general mood was unanimous. And these weren't just drunk rants. This was the sober crowd speaking plainly. The food didn't exactly redeem the evening. For all the money they seemed to be throwing around, I expected something better. Instead, they served up bland steak, suspiciously marinated chicken, and charred fish that tasted like it had been nuked in a fast food microwave. Honestly, I've had tastier shrimp baskets at gas stations. It was obvious the real budget had gone to the alcohol, which flowed freely until midnight, or until someone passed out, whichever came first. I nursed a couple cocktails early on, then wandered with a half glass of red wine in hand, mostly for show. Somewhere along the way, a tall man in an overpriced suit cornered me. "Having a good time?" he asked, flashing the kind of corporate smile that had been rehearsed in a mirror. "Doing my best," I replied. "You're Caroline's husband, right?" "She's doing great. Declan's taken her under his wing. There's talk of a promotion. Team lead, maybe. You must be proud." He grinned and moved on before I could respond. I managed a polite, "Thanks," but the compliment sat wrong. Where was she? I scanned the room. No sign of Caroline. I drained the rest of my wine and went searching. The event spanned the main ballroom and two side suites. I checked the hallway, glanced through doors. Still nothing. Eventually, I stepped into one of the hotel suites, packed shoulder to shoulder with buzzed employees. Judging by the glassy eyes and the laughter pitched just a little too loud, not many would be driving home sober. I was turning to leave when I stopped near the bathroom and leaned casually against the wall. That's when I caught her voice. "Cut it out. Not tonight. Samuel's here," she said, her tone tight with urgency. "I can't believe you dragged that idiot with you." A man, unmistakably Declan, responded. "I reserved a room for us. You told me he wasn't coming. I didn't expect it, she snapped. He saw the dress you bought and insisted. What? He's your watchdog now? Declan chuckled. Please. If he ever protected you, that ended ages ago. He laughed again, a low, smug sound. And just like that, everything fell into place. Caroline was trading loyalty for leverage. Her climb up the ladder came with certain compromises, ones she'd rather not talk about. Then I heard more, something barely audible, something about getting me out of the picture. Thank God I was sober. I needed a clear head. There was an empty champagne bottle chilling nearby, tucked in a silver bucket. Didn't matter that it was drained. It had weight. Declan was younger, taller, stronger. Physically, the odds were against me. If I wanted a shot, I'd need to make it count. Caroline stepped out first, smoothing the straps of her dress like nothing had happened. She didn't even see me standing there. Then Declan followed. I moved to intercept him. Declan, I said, you know what you really are? He glanced sideways, then smirked. Bad move. I shifted the bottle behind my back, fingers gripping the neck. If he'd reacted with anything but that smile, maybe things would have ended differently. But that grin? It said everything. I've got your wife. What now? I said his name again, loud enough for Caroline to hear. She turned. Time slowed. Movies lie. Bottles don't shatter cleanly. Even empty, a champagne bottle hits hard. But it didn't break, and Declan didn't drop. He was stunned, though. I'm no fighter. Last time I threw a punch, I was 12 and lost badly. But this was different. He needed pain. I needed to give it to him. What followed was messy, loud, brutal. I landed enough punches to split my knuckles, and one desperate headbutt crunched his nose. By the time security or a few burly co-workers pulled us apart, Declan was a bleeding mess, and I was shaking with adrenaline. But I felt something else too. Relief. Maybe even satisfaction. It was hard to say who looked more wrecked when it ended, him or me. But if I had to choose, I'd say I took his crown, stomped on it, and kicked it straight to hell. Declan was coughing up blood and cursing like he'd lost his mind, while I just leaned back, smirking like I'd already won. That smug little grin of mine pushed him over the edge. The yelling escalated fast, threats fired like bullets, until someone finally got smart enough to tell me to leave. Caroline was sobbing in a corner, her mascara streaking down her cheeks like a ruined painting. Don't come back, I told her, deadpan. I don't care where you land. Just don't set foot in that house again. A pair of hotel security guards flanked me and walked me out into the cold night. My right eye was foggy with swelling, but I slid into the car anyway and limped my way home behind the wheel. I pulled into the garage, cut across the kitchen, and went straight to the fridge. 4 ice packs and a cold beer later, I finally sat down. I parked myself on the kitchen stool for what felt like an eternity, rotating ice packs on my knuckles, sipping that Corona, and bracing for the sound of a squad car rolling up. But nothing happened. No sirens, no knock. I figured they'd come tomorrow, maybe by Monday at the latest. I glanced down at my hands, swollen, aching, raw, and it hit me that this holiday was about to be a far cry from the ones before. Christmas was only days away, and true to form, I hadn't picked up a single present. Good thing I had the week off, and shopping for one is easy when you're shopping for yourself. I reached into my coat pocket, half hoping I still had the reason I swung at Declan in the first place. He tried pressing charges for assault, but once my attorney caught wind of the full story, a few strategic calls were made. Like magic, the charges disappeared. Turns out someone high up the corporate ladder didn't want this mess tied to their name. My lawyer made it clear, if they pushed it, the headlines would come, and no string of fairy lights could hide the truth. A scorned husband catching his wife mid-affair at her company's Christmas bash? That was headline gold. Sure, Declan was a tool, but he was their tool. Afterward, Caroline kept trying to reach me. Call after call, voicemail after voicemail, I ignored everyone. The boys spoke with her, but not once did they try to excuse what she'd done. Maybe I didn't completely screw up as a father. Friends and relatives tried to sprinkle a little holiday spirit around, but everything felt fake, like echoes in a house that used to be a home. I figured the legal stuff could wait until January. No point in spoiling what little peace my family had left. Meanwhile, over at her parents' place, Caroline's mom spotted a FedEx truck pulling up. The delivery guy hustled to the door. "Delivery for Caroline Martinez," he said. Her mother signed without thinking, then handed the small, gift-wrapped box to her daughter. "It's from Samuel." The package was compact, neatly wrapped. Caroline peeled off the paper, revealing a black velvet ring box. A flicker of hope sparked in her expression, until she opened it. The box slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. Two bloodied teeth rolled across the tile, landing at her father's feet. He stared for a second, then calmly picked them up, tucked them into his pocket, and walked away while Caroline crumbled to pieces. The divorce papers arrived the day after Christmas, along with a letter. Caroline had been hoping, foolishly, that I might still be willing to talk, to listen, to forgive. But that moment never came. She tore the envelope open with shaking hands. Inside, a letter, typed and signed. "Dear Caroline, I hope you liked your Christmas gift. Let's be real. Declan would have never had the spine to give it to you himself. I'm glad I could help. At this point, your reasons don't matter. Maybe you had some. I just hope they were worth it. Let's make one thing clear. I didn't go after Declan that night to win you back. The second I saw what I saw, we were done. I didn't fight for you. I fought for me. Sure, I could have just walked away, filed for divorce, let Declan come out clean, but that didn't sit right with me. Someone had to hit him where it hurt. And I'll admit, he's tougher than I gave him credit for. Thought cracking that bottle across his skull would have dropped him cold. Part of me's glad it didn't. Felt good to see him flinch. They threw me out, yeah, but I made my point. And before I left, I spotted those two teeth on the floor. I made sure to grab them. I heard Declan lost his job. You just got knocked down a rung. Must have really wowed the top brass. Maybe one of them will take care of you now, the way Declan did. Maybe they'll give you a nickname too. The home wrecker has a certain charm, or maybe break room Barbie. Anyway, just sign the divorce papers. Let's end this circus. You keep your junk, I'll keep mine. We'll sell the house. It's too much for me now anyway. Every room reeks of what we used to be. I've told the boys the truth. You cheated. I hated doing it, but they deserved honesty. You're still their mom. That's worth some respect. No more than that. I'd love to wish you happiness, but that'd be a lie. Honestly, I hope karma finds you fast and hits you harder than I ever could. When our mutual friends start asking questions, and they will, I'll tell them everything. Fill in the blanks if you want, assuming anyone still gives a damn. Your soon-to-be ex-husband. My lawyer got the signed documents on New Year's Eve. Just like that, I rang in the new year a free man. Word was, Caroline quit her job a few weeks later and vanished. I never asked where she went. Maybe one day the boys will fill me in. Some people still whisper that I acted too quickly, tossed 25 years out over one mistake, one fight. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt. Whenever the topic came up, I'd meet the guy's gaze and coolly ask if he'd be open to lending me his wife for the weekend, just for a little physical release. The usual reaction was some variation of, "Are you out of your mind?" And I'd reply, "Well, you can take her back Monday. It'll only be the one time." That's usually when the gravity of the situation began to register with them, when they'd get a small taste of what it was like standing in my shoes. I floated that same offer past maybe 6 different friends. Only one actually said yes. The condition? His wife was 74, hard of hearing, and shuffled around with a walker. David grinned when he said it. I called him a bastard, but told him I'd think about it. Of course I wouldn't. Now, any time I read about a man who's chosen the cuckold's road, I find myself looking down at the worn skin on my knuckles. And honestly, no regrets. I'd walk the same path all over again if I had to. It just sucks that so few really understand what it means, what it costs to live like that. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Everything was perfect. Or at least, it seemed that way. He believed in her, in them, in the idea that love could withstand anything. But one day, his wife didn't come home on time. Then she started ignoring his calls. And soon after, she began to lie. Little things, small details. But together, they formed a disturbing pattern. One lie hid another, and then came the moment he heard a phrase he was never meant to hear. And just like that, everything collapsed. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. Even now, a week later, I find it hard to make sense of the terrifying ordeal I went through. It's surreal, like something that should have happened to someone else, not me. But life has a cruel way of flipping your world upside down when you least expect it. Let me give you some context. Marissa and I had been married a little over a year. On the surface, we looked like the picture-perfect couple. But if that were the full truth, you wouldn't be hearing this. So let's go back to where everything started. It's the only way this will make any kind of sense. The nightmare kicked off in October, just after Marissa landed a big promotion at work. I was genuinely thrilled for her. She had earned it, no question. The boost in pay didn't hurt either. But the new role came with a catch. She'd be working in a different office, farther from home, with a brand new team of colleagues. At first, I thought the change might actually be good for her. A fresh start, maybe. But it didn't take long before I started noticing shifts, subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. The timing couldn't have been worse on my end. As a software developer, I was buried under year-end projects and deadlines. My workload was crushing, and I threw myself into it, thinking if I just powered through, it would benefit both of us. But while I was drowning in code and conference calls, Marissa was slipping further away. She started spending more time with her new coworkers, particularly a tight circle of women she seemed to click with instantly. They always had something going on: happy hours, birthday parties, casual get-togethers. In the beginning, I shrugged it off. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who hovers or gets jealous. But the late nights started piling up, and soon I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The first real red flag came one chilly evening in November. Marissa didn't come home when she usually did, and I couldn't get through to her. Calls went unanswered, texts ignored. My mind ran wild with terrible scenarios. When she finally walked through the door just before midnight, she looked disoriented and unsettled. "Where were you?" I asked, keeping my voice as neutral as I could. "I'm really sorry, Travis," she said, her tone slightly slurred, like she'd had a few drinks. "It was Rebecca's birthday. We ended up staying out longer than I thought." Her explanation wasn't unbelievable, but there was something in the way she avoided my eyes that made my stomach turn. Her phone kept buzzing, but she ignored every notification. I couldn't say exactly why, but something felt off, and that feeling didn't fade. In fact, it only got stronger as the days went by. Her coming home late became routine. Every time there was a new excuse: work dinners, last-minute invites, impromptu meetups. I tried to stay patient, to trust her, but each night chipped away at my peace of mind. Eventually, I couldn't stay silent anymore. After another one of her late returns, I asked her to sit down so we could talk. "Marissa," I said, my voice calm but firm, "something has to change. I need to understand why you're always out so late, and why I'm always left wondering." She folded her arms across her chest and gave me a look that was more defensive than concerned. "Travis, what exactly are you trying to say? I'm a grown woman. I don't have to check in every time I step out the door. This isn't about control, I replied, trying to keep things from escalating. It's about respect. We're married. I just want to know when to expect you or where you'll be. That's not unreasonable. She rolled her eyes and let out a bitter laugh. If you trusted me, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. Her words hit me like a slap. It's not that I don't trust you, I said, my jaw tight. It's that lately it feels like I've become an afterthought, like your friends and these outings matter more than I do. We ended up arguing for nearly an hour, talking in circles, both of us trying to justify our feelings. By the end, she reluctantly agreed to scale back her nights out. But even as she said the words, I could tell something between us had shifted. For a couple of weeks, she made a visible effort, but the warmth was gone. She was there physically, but her heart wasn't. She stopped being affectionate. Conversations felt like chores. Then came the day I got my own promotion. It was a long-awaited win, not just professionally, but personally. I'd finally have more time to spend at home, something Marissa had told me we needed. I saw it as an opportunity to reconnect, to bring us back to where we once were. I planned a small surprise, a dinner, a quiet evening together. I just wanted to remind her of us. I came home early that night, easing open the front door in silence, hoping to catch her in a sweet moment of surprise. Instead, I froze when I heard her voice drifting from the kitchen. She was on the phone. I don't think he has any clue. He's been so buried in work. But we need to be more careful. My heart dropped. I couldn't breathe. I stood there, unable to move. Who was she talking to? What was she hiding? I walked into the kitchen without saying a word. She turned around, startled for a split second before forcing a smile. Who were you talking to? I asked, my voice steady but tight. She laughed awkwardly. Oh, it's nothing. Just a coworker. We're organizing a surprise for someone's birthday. It was plausible enough. But the way she said it, too fast, too defensive, set off every alarm in my body. Then why did it sound so secretive? I asked. She let out a frustrated sigh. Because it is a surprise, Travis. You're seriously overthinking this. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was imagining things. I backed off. Sorry, I said quietly. Maybe I read too much into it. But the truth is, I didn't. Not really. She managed a smile, but it never reached her eyes. Seriously, it's nothing. Let's not blow this out of proportion, okay? I gave a small nod, choosing to let it go, even as a tight coil of dread began winding itself around my chest and refused to let go. Over the next few weeks, the growing gap between us became impossible to overlook. She was always on her phone, smiling at messages I never got to see, staying up late texting someone else. I started to feel more like an observer in my own relationship than an active part of it. When she mentioned the upcoming holiday party her company was throwing, my unease spiked. It's work-related, Travis, she said when I expressed concern. All the key people will be there. I'll be back early, she added, trying to reassure me. I relented, though every instinct told me something was off. The day of the event, I drove her out to a country house where the party was being held. Just as she stepped out of the car, my phone buzzed. It was an old friend calling to congratulate me on a promotion I hadn't even announced publicly. I stayed in the car to take the call, eyes trailing her as she walked up to the front door. That's when I saw him. A man stood waiting at the entrance, far too familiar in the way he greeted her. His hand found the small of her back as they slipped inside together. My stomach turned. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was being irrational, but the image stayed with me, etched into my mind. When I got home later that night, the unease only intensified. Her laptop was open on the desk in our study, unattended. A part of me knew this was my moment to seek the truth. But a traffic pileup had delayed me, and by the time I walked through the door, I was too exhausted to do anything but collapse onto the couch. That's when I heard the knock. I opened the door to find Ophelia, Marissa's younger sister, standing there. Her skin was pale, her eyes scanning the shadows like she expected someone to be chasing her. "Ophelia? What are you doing here?" I asked, confused. "Can I come inside?" she asked, her voice barely steady. I stepped aside, watching as she paced the room, hands twisting nervously in front of her. "What's going on?" I asked, my concern rising. "Is something wrong?" She paused, looking away before meeting my gaze, tears beginning to well in her eyes. "Travis, I've been holding this in for too long. I can't keep quiet anymore." She hesitated, then dropped the truth I'd feared for weeks. "Marissa's been seeing someone else." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The ground beneath me might as well have vanished. This was Ophelia, the woman I had trusted like family for years, confirming the thing I had tried not to believe. Anger and heartbreak surged inside me. I had given everything to Marissa. Ophelia worked at the same company, which only made her confession harder to ignore. She described how Marissa's behavior had changed after she transferred to a new office. The new crowd she surrounded herself with was known for their reckless lifestyle. One guy in particular stood out, someone Ophelia had seen Marissa spending an unusual amount of time with. "That must be the guy I saw," I said, recalling a suspicious phone call I'd overheard. Ophelia gave a solemn nod. "I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but at the party," she faltered. "Tell me what you saw," I said, my voice low. They weren't being discreet, Travis. They were all over each other, whispering, laughing, acting like no one else was in the room. She drew a shaky breath. "I saw them kiss. After that, they went upstairs. Together." I clenched my fists. The betrayal felt corrosive, eating away at everything we'd built. The woman I thought I knew had shattered everything with her lies. I thanked Ophelia, though her words tore me apart. Then I walked straight to the study and opened Marissa's laptop. I needed proof, and I found it. The evidence was right there. Group messages mocking me behind my back, flirtatious and obscene exchanges with the coworker, carefully coded plans, inside jokes at my expense. It was irrefutable, cruel, devastating. I shut the laptop and stared blankly ahead, my mind a whirlwind of fury and disbelief. Then, without warning, a memory surfaced, something I hadn't thought of in years. Before Marissa and I had become a couple, there had been a fleeting moment between Ophelia and me. It never developed. Marissa had swept in with her usual charisma and pulled me into her orbit. At the time, I hadn't questioned it. But now, I couldn't help but wonder, had I made the wrong choice? I looked across the room. Ophelia was still there, anxious yet quietly present. I stood, grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the cabinet, and poured 2 glasses. "To seeing things clearly," I muttered. "To honesty," she replied softly. We stayed up for hours, talking about Marissa, the lies, the years I'd spent trying to salvage something already broken. Ophelia opened up too. She'd always believed Marissa was manipulative, always taking what she wanted without thought for the consequences. She couldn't stay silent any longer. The whiskey blurred the edges, made it easier to speak the things we'd buried. Feelings we'd both pushed aside began to surface. The conversation took on a rawness neither of us expected, and slowly, painfully, it led us to each other. That night, we ended up in bed. Morning broke with a scream. Marissa stood in the doorway, her face contorted with rage. "What the hell is this?" I sat up, the haze of sleep lifting, but my regret never came. "It's exactly what it looks like." She glanced from me to Ophelia, who grabbed a blanket, her cheeks burning with shame. Tears welled up in Marissa's eyes. "How could you? With my sister?" The words escaped me as I rose from the bed, collected and deliberate, locking eyes with her. I wouldn't let her twist the narrative. "Don't play the wounded party, Marissa. You know exactly what you've done. The affair with your coworker? That secret's been out for a while now. You broke our vows, and now you stand there indignant? Her fury flickered, giving way to fear. Travis, please, I can explain, she stuttered. It wasn't serious. It didn't mean anything. Don't waste your breath, I interrupted, my voice cutting through the room. I'd seen the texts. I knew about the night of that party. You made your choices, Marissa. Now I'm making mine. She collapsed into a chair, consumed by guilt, shoulders trembling with every sob. Travis, I'm begging you, don't give up on us. I'll resign. We can fix this, I swear. Just don't walk away like this. But I didn't waver. My tone was cool, unshakable. You ended this the moment you chose someone else. There's no going back. Then Marissa turned her rage elsewhere, toward Ophelia. Her desperation sharpened into venom. And you? How could you do this to me? You're my own sister! Ophelia didn't flinch. She met Marissa's stare with unwavering strength. And how could you do what you did to Travis? You treated him like he didn't matter. You expected me to keep quiet? You don't get to be the victim now. You did this to yourself. Marissa didn't say another word. She spun around and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. After that confrontation, I didn't hesitate. I packed my things that very night. It wasn't impulsive. I simply couldn't remain in a home built on broken trust. I rented a small apartment in the heart of the city, modest, but it gave me space to breathe, to reset, to begin again. Not long after, I called Marissa to let her know I was filing for divorce. Her reaction took me off guard. No, Travis, please, her voice cracked. We can talk this through. We can still fix it. Fix it? I echoed, the chill in my tone undeniable. This wasn't a slip-up, Marissa. You shattered the foundation of everything we built. It wasn't like that, she insisted. It was just a moment of stupidity. I wasn't thinking. I love you. I just needed to feel something different for a moment. She wanted to reduce her betrayal to a moment of weakness, like it was a harmless mistake. The words struck me like a blow to the chest. She tried to make it sound small, inconsequential, something forgettable. I ended the call in silence. I wasn't going to get pulled into a debate over the phone, but I did agree to meet face to face. Not for closure, just to settle the details. We met at a quiet little cafe, one we used to visit in the early days. The irony hung heavy in the air. We kept the conversation civil at first, dividing property, outlining next steps, finalizing the paperwork. I held on to hope that we could handle this with maturity. But then she shifted. She leaned forward, eyes lit with a strange intensity. Travis, have you ever thought about how the world is changing? I narrowed my eyes. What's your point? People don't love the way they used to, she said. Relationships are evolving. Open marriages, non-monogamy. It works for so many couples now. Maybe we just need to try something different. I stared at her, stunned. You're really trying to pass your affair off as some kind of progressive lifestyle choice? She nodded, hopeful. Exactly. A fresh start. No more lies, just structure and honesty. We could make it work. That was it. I stood, my chair scraping the floor behind me. It's over, Marissa, I said, resolute. You don't get to rewrite betrayal as some kind of modern enlightenment. I'm not buying it. Her face darkened. As I walked away, I heard her hiss under her breath. You'll regret this. From that moment, everything changed. The apologies dried up. Bitterness took their place. What started as pleas for forgiveness turned into full-blown legal warfare. She fought over everything, every asset, every term. She even tried to use my bond with Ophelia against me in court. But I held firm. I had the truth and the evidence. I stayed composed, let my lawyer handle the chaos, and trusted the process. After months of drawn-out hearings and emotional exhaustion, the divorce was finalized. We split everything down the middle. And just like that, Marissa became a closed chapter in my life. Ophelia, though, she never left my side. Her loyalty never faltered. With her, I found clarity again. Time spent with her felt simple, honest, and slowly something began to rebuild, something authentic, a real connection, a new beginning. What started as simple encounters, grabbing a bite to eat, wandering through quiet streets, gradually transformed into something deeper, something undeniably real. Without consciously deciding, Ophelia and I found ourselves sharing a home. It didn't feel forced or rushed. Instead, it was as though destiny had gently reopened a door we thought was permanently closed. Predictably, Marissa's reaction was explosive. She flooded my phone with angry texts, hurling accusations of betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me. I let the messages go unanswered. Marissa had forfeited any right to influence my choices or disturb the calm I was beginning to rebuild. Living with Ophelia brought a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in a long time. There was no pressure to define our connection or put a label on it. We were both navigating carefully, still carrying the emotional residue of the wreckage Marissa had left behind. And yet, beneath the surface, there was an unspoken understanding, a quiet intimacy rooted in honesty and mutual regard. For the first time in years, I could envision a future that felt not just possible, but worth hoping for. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.